Well, welcome. I trust that this video finds you doing well. The other day, my son Joshua and I were working on a video for our channel, and the topic was longevity risk, or the fear of outliving your capital. That's a subconscious and conscious fear for a lot of people. It doesn't need to happen. There are strategies you can employ. By the way, if you want to watch that video, there's a link in the show notes that'll take you to that video. And when we were doing the research for that content, I came across an article titled "The 100-Year Life Rethinking Retirement in Canada, Adapting to Unprecedented Longevity in a Modern Society." And that article had some interesting ideas, both some positive takes on longevity, but also some challenges we need to confront in our retirement planning. So I thought it'd be a good idea to cover those pieces in this video so that you can make sure that you're doing the best possible planning that you can and that you're not sleepwalking into this whole discussion of longevity and the 100-year life. And so I think you'll find it helpful. By the way, if you're new to our channel, welcome. We produce content all the time. 30 years of experience helping clients, hundreds and hundreds of families get ready for retirement. So there's some free resources and the opportunity for a complimentary consultation. If you're getting serious about planning, just visit the show notes. You'll see the links there. Now, when we were doing the research, there was a suggestion that there's a new reality to longevity. So if you go back to the founding of our country, average life expectancy many, many years ago, a long time ago, was 40 years of age. Now today we're looking at an average of age 82, and many people live much longer than that. In fact, when we look at retirement, we're looking at retirement lasting 25 years, 30, 35 years or longer. And we're also seeing a shift where we've seen the largest group of older workers that Canada's ever seen beginning to transition into retirement. So what that means is that retirement at 65 might be a little bit of an outdated concept. So the idea of leaving work at 65 increasingly feels a little bit out of step with some of the modern realities. So one reality is just there's less and less support programs through defined benefit programs, and workers have to subsidize and support and save for their retirement in a much more intentional way than they've had in the future because they don't have employer-sponsored pension plans the same way. The other thing is that medical advances are just helping us live longer, and people are embracing healthier lifestyles, which will lead to longer life expectancy. And Canadians in general probably need to rethink their approach to careers and savings and lifestyle because of this 100-year life. And we talked about in the YouTube video that Joshua and I put together that the challenge is there's sort of a multiplier effect. So as we live longer, there may be health issues we have to deal with, maybe a loss of a spouse, which can lead to loss of income, and we're putting more pressure on our portfolio. So we need to pay attention and try to find ways of making sure that we're making the right decisions. Now, much of the work that we do in this challenge is related to the financial aspects of retirement planning, but all of us would agree that health and well-being in an extended life of 100 years, as an example, is really important. There's 4 major sections: health challenges, healthcare system, social connections, and proactive health management. Under health challenges, we essentially go through what's called a multiplier effect. We collect a constellation of problems, and we need to think through that in the context of our planning. In a couple situation, as an example, you could see usually one in the couple will pass away, then the survivor will live for a few years, maybe a number of years, but they might be on less income, less pension income, and they'll put more pressure on their financial savings. It's one of the reasons why I always insist that clients model a first to die scenario. So as you go through your retirement journey, if the partner passes away, what's the financial impact of the surviving partner? It's a really important exercise to go through to see how resilient your plan is. Healthcare system pressures, that's nothing new. We all know that. But we are seeing clients more and more building in some additional costs at the back end of their planning. So we talk about the go-go years, the slow-go years, and the no-go years. It really looks like a smile now. So you've got the go-go years, slow-go years, and then the back end of the retirement, you might have additional healthcare costs. And again, we're seeing clients more and more wanting us to model that aspect into their planning. Health and social connections, be intentional in this area. I know in our neighborhood, we've seen some folks really do this well. So they've diversified their demographic, age, social networks. As we get older, we start losing friends and loved ones and family. And by making connections with younger folks, you tend to make your social connections really, really resilient. And you might be part of groups. It could be your church, it could be hobbies, interests that you have that get you out there and connected to those relationships, which are critical. So if you haven't been being intentional in this area, you haven't thought about diversifying your social network, like diversifying in your portfolio, I'd really encourage you to begin thinking through that and what kinds of steps can you begin putting in place to do that. And then proactive health management, we all know the drill. Get out for walks, do some strength training, have a healthy diet. The better you do that in this area, the more you're going to enjoy your retirement and the wealth that you've created to live out your retirement years. So let's talk about some practical adjustments for longevity, both at the personal and societal level, mostly personal. So again, when you think about aging, you've got the natural discussions on housing and living costs. Some of the big ones that come up for clients for sure is downsizing. So you see folks that have been in their principal residence for years, they've built up equity, and they're beginning to look at other options when it comes to retirement residence, maybe a condo, maybe a rental situation. And a very common thing that we do for clients is to just model that scenario. Okay, you've got your house, what's the rate of appreciation? When potentially will it sell? What's the monetized value after you've looked after your living accommodations, whether you buy a condo or some other arrangement, or maybe rent? And what could that monetized value from the sale of the property generate as investment income to subsidize some of those living costs? So that's a really important thing to build into your plan, because for most people, it's going to happen, right? For some people, they're just adamant that they're going to stay in that home. And so the secondary discussion is going to be, what do you need to be doing in that home to make sure that it's more accessible and it's going to be the appropriate spot for you as you get older, and maybe there's more mobility issues, right? So very important area. Technology and digital literacy. This has been an amazing one. I think if I look back at COVID, and we were wondering as practitioners, what's going to happen with our business? Most of our meetings were face-to-face. And it was extraordinary to see how clients, and a lot of older clients, really embrace technology. And that will continue to be a very, very important component to that aging process. Falling behind creates barriers to employment and daily life. So it's an important area to stay on top of. And then you have estate planning and wealth transfer. Don't wait too long for these conversations. I really encourage my clients to have tough conversations early on. Make sure you start them ideally in your 60s to mid 70s, no later than that. As we get older, our bandwidth from a cognitive standpoint sometimes doesn't allow us to have really great conversations on this topic. And what happens more often than not is people don't have those conversations and everyone's scrambling. Another practical application is sometimes it's not spoken of, but people maybe are expecting inheritances from their parents and that kind of thing. But with an aging population, a lot of that wealth might be needed for the care of parents, particularly in the environment, like I said, where governments are pulling back, they're not able to do the same things, and families are going to have to step up to look after the care of parents and dealing with those overall costs. But nonetheless, make sure that your power of attorney, your healthcare directive, your will is up to date, and that you've been talking to your family about what your intentions are. So when it comes to the 100-year life idea or conversation, it is thought-provoking, right? There's some questions that come up financially. One question is, what does it look like when you push the life expectancy out from 85, 90, 95 to 100? How resilient is your plan? What about those healthcare costs? We think about go, slow go, no go, but maybe it's go, slow go, and up go because of healthcare costs that you have to absorb. What does your plan look like when you begin to build that into the model? What does it look like when you monetize real estate and then use those assets to generate income for other alternative accommodations down the road? Have you built that into your model to see what the ripple effect might be? And then finally, you've got the estate planning piece. Make sure that you're keeping those conversations current and updated around power of attorney, your will, distributions, how much estate value will you actually have. Make sure your family understands what the trend line is going to be so that everyone's on the same side of the song sheet in terms of your planning. And if you want to get really concrete about these ideas and see how they apply to your circumstances, again, make sure you go to the show notes. There's a link back to our website. You can set up a complimentary call to learn more about how we model these kinds of scenarios into the planning so you have peace of mind. Now, if you like this video, the next video that's showing up on your screen talks about longevity risk from a financial standpoint as well. Anyway, wishing you all the best in your retirement planning journey.